Hello fellow cycling fans, you have joined me at the geekiest, most nerdy place for cycling related power breakdowns on the YouTube world. No, you haven't really, but today I really want to talk about MVDP, Mathieu van der Poel, and what a great rider he is, and he will be even better in the future, I suspect. Now, I'm going to talk to you today very loosely. It's going to be a very kind of slack conversation, but I really want to go through a few things that might really interest you in light of kind of what's happened the last few weeks, or last few months rather, with his performances on the World Tour scene. Obviously being a very good cyclocross rider, a very good mountain biker in his own right. He's now moved across to the road and is, quite frankly, dominating the one-day circuit. Interesting to see what he'll do at stage races, actually, but we'll get to that some other time in maybe 10 years or whatever. But MVDP is actually a year younger than me, weighs in around 15 kilos heavier than me. As you can see here, his weight 75 kilos, his height is around about 15 centimeters taller than me, which is a fair whack, so that's where the weight comes from, I'm guessing. I consider myself a climber, if those of you know me and follow my videos. I pride myself in that, really, but this guy is just a powerhouse. Perfect build, in my opinion, in terms of height and weight, for just giving maximum power into the pedals for certain one-day races that have suited him. We can see his palmares for this year. Obviously the AMSTEL Gold, which if you haven't seen it, where have you been? It was incredible. I'm speechless right now, but we'll get into it really quickly. His career goes back to 2012, but in 2013 he rode the World Championships, coming first. Not such a great time in the individual time trial, but we don't know the situation there, but still a very good ride in the road race. So he's got pedigree, and a little highlighted mark down here. He is the grandson of Raymond Poulidor, Poupou, the eternal second. For those of you that are older than 40 years of age, I'm sure you remember him, maybe. Adrian van der Poel, his father, famously beat Sean Kelly at, I'm going to get this wrong, so I better click on it, Tour of Flanders in '86. So Pro Cycling Stats, if you didn't already know, is a very good website to get a lot of information from on the world cycling stage, basically. So we've got a few things here. I've got a few tabs open, doing a little bit of reading, so don't mind those. But yeah, we're going into a little bit of breakdown. So a little bit of breakdown of his AMSTEL Gold race, which he won. Congratulations, MVDP. By the way, I love that abbreviation, that name. You should really get that printed on a shirt. So everything is up here for us to see, which is brilliant. Now there's an awful lot of disclaimers I've got to put here. We don't know what his threshold power is. We don't know what his max heart rate is. We don't know what his max power is. We don't know a lot of things. So take whatever I say now with a pinch of salt. It's just for information. It's just a bit of education, and it's just a bit of fun. So I'm just going to go through this anyway. I saw this and I thought, you know what, I'm going to switch a camera on, I'm going to record this, and it'll be worth, I'm sure somebody's going to get some value out of it. So if you do, please give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it, and share it with somebody. Share it with a riding buddy, share it with somebody else who could not believe this ride that MVDP did. And so without further ado, let's get into it. Now, Strava isn't the best analysis tool, but we're going to make do with it at this point. So there's an awful lot to dig into here. We're just going to pick out a few things. Let's pick out the first hour to start with. So here we go. First hour, 40k, not very fast. Well, not very fast for a European one-day race. But there's some few little efforts here, as you can tell from his heart rate. This is something that I love about MVDP. He wears a heart rate monitor, even though he uses a power meter. You'll be surprised to know how many pros do not use heart rate anymore, and they just ride with the power meter, and then they can't compare the two. Heart rate actually tells you quite a lot. So what I can see from this already is that he was probably tapering for this event. How do I know that? Well, his heart rate is extremely responsive. It's going up and down. We can see here from the whole ride, it's going up and down quite a bit. Now, the reason why I say he's tapered and he's a little bit more fresh for this is because his heart rate drops quite a bit here, which indicates that his body is kind of in an optimal state of recovery. So he's obviously making the most of these periods early doors. There's a 50-minute section here where he's averaged 190 watts, which we know just by looking at this is well below his capacity. But his heart rate drops down very, very quick. So it's very responsive. Not only does it go up very fast, so we can see here in the space of, let's just take a look at it, in the space of a minute and a half, it goes from literally 100 beats a minute, which is like him sat on the sofa, to 173 rather, in one kind of big effort. So what he's doing is he's recovering very quickly, so we can almost tell that he's in a very good state physically today. So looking at the middle section of the race, and there's not a lot to see here. Obviously you can see more from the race itself. I didn't actually watch the whole race. I'm going to confess right now, I only saw the last kind of part of the race. So I'm going to make a lot of assumptions here, and you can comment below whether or not I'm right or wrong. But hopefully I am slightly right. There's an awful lot of kind of, well, there's more now. There's more efforts that we can actually pull out and extract from this. You can actually see where he's making efforts. So these little bergs, as they'll call them in this part of the world, 3k at 3%, he's averaging nearly 400 watts, and his heart rate is getting up and plateauing. So he's making a lot more kind of steady state efforts. And as you can see, his heart rate starts to drift. So we can see by this dotted line right here, if you can see this dotted line, this is his average heart rate. 140 will be his average there. So as you can see, his heart rate is kind of below that for a lot of that first part of the race. So we look at the average over the first part is 127. And then for the second part, roughly, it's about 160. So this is known as cardiac drift. So as everybody gets fatigued, cardiac drift occurs. And you can Google the crap out of that, but it basically means that as people are getting more tired, their heart will just the heart rate will take longer to come down, and hence you won't recover as fast. So what he's doing here, as you can see, there's less and less spikes coming down below that 140. So you can almost tell just by looking at it that this last kind of 50k or so, or 70k rather, is actually quite hard. This is where the race is won, basically. People will start to fatigue through this whole race. Like this is the whole thing about the European one-day stage races. They're just so grippy. They're so hilly, and without you knowing, you've climbed 3,500 meters and the day's over. So what he's done is he's saved a lot of matches to this last part of the race, and we can see he uses a fair few in quick succession in this last kind of, I guess, 44k in the last hour, which is the perfect time to use it. The last hour of the race, like, you know, you can use a lot more matches in the last hour and get away with it, especially when the group now starts to whittle down. So his first match, you can kind of see here, he gets up to 444 for 9 minutes. I'm not going to talk about data too much because obviously you can see what I see right here. So you can see there's one big effort right here, and you can tell he's on the front because his cadence rather is flatlined. So there's no kind of drops. Obviously there is here, but this is where I think he hits the front and he starts to drive it for his own benefit. Now look at this, he spends 4.5 minutes on the front, and this road is flat. You can tell here, and you can tell here, so 0.6 is flat. So if he was on a climb, you wouldn't be able to tell, because he could well be on the wheel, on somebody's wheel, and he could well be doing that and just holding on. But you can tell he's on the front here and pulling a full turn for 4.5 minutes, because there is no let up in that cadence. Because if you were behind somebody on a flat bit of road, you would end up kind of stalling into them, and you'd be freewheeling slightly, then you'd be on the power and freewheeling slightly, unless obviously it was a warping crosswind, which would be a different case altogether. So let's go back to the last section again. So we've done this bit, and then there's a fair few kind of little climbs, as you can see in the top here. You can see a few climbs, and you can also see it here when I move it over. He puts it to go a few times. There's a fair few spikes where he's coming out of corners. Again, it's just very, very hard racing here. He's allowed a little bit of recovery, and you can see his cadence is a little bit more choppy, so people are obviously giving him a few turns. It's also going around quite a bit. There's a lot of corners, so it's a lot of kind of uncontrollable pace changes going on in this part of the race. But then we get to these last few bits. So we've got one climb here, which I'm just going to take a look at. And he averages 500 watts for almost 2 minutes. Now for somebody his size, that's just a smidge under 7 watts per kilo, which isn't huge, but when you put it in perspective of riding 6.5 hours, it's huge numbers. I'd encourage you to go out the door right now if you've got a power meter, or maybe not right now, you need to get kitted up and put your cycling shoes on, because I know you do it in trainers, but I don't want you to injure yourself. You try doing 500 watts at being 75 kilos straight up your nearest hill for 1 minute and 41. It'd be quite hard, I think. I can't do it, but I know I'm a lot smaller than MVDP, but I could probably do it, but it would be hard. Now, could I do it after 240k? Probably not, and that's the difference between me and Mathieu van der Poel. So the last part of the race, he comes off that descent, not a lot of recovery, maybe a minute or two of recovery, and then he's into this one big, huge effort. And I think this is the effort that's breaking the internet right now, and I think there's no other better way of saying that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this little infographic that I found. I cannot remember, I'm really sorry, I cannot remember where I found it. I found it on Twitter. If you know anybody, if you know the person that made it, if you know the brains behind this, can you please thank them and maybe point them in this direction of the video, because I'm not taking credit for this at all. Again, I cannot remember where I got it from on Twitter, and I'm sorry about that. But let's just take a look at this last section that these guys break down for us very well. So for the last 3 minutes 20, we'll ignore the speed because it's irrelevant really. 461 watts at 6.23 watts per kilo. Now, there's a lot of kind of watts per kilo talk around here. Now, you know, it obviously with the rise of Zwift, I think people have become a lot more aware of what watts per kilo is and how it translates to real world numbers and how people can compare themselves to pros. But it's just incredible how you see like 2.5 minutes at 7.2 watts per kilo are pure, and you know, even this 7.8 watts per kilo for nearly 2 minutes there, that's the one we just talked about a couple of minutes ago. It's an awful lot of work, and his normalised power, look, 4.8, again, it's not massive, but it's just this deadly blow that he's giving here. It really is deadly. You know, if you did 4.8 watts per kilo for 4.5 hour race, which would probably end around here, that wouldn't be too bad. Like, people could probably live with him a little bit better, but because he's capable of doing it up to here, you know, that's what separates him, I think. So let's go ahead and close this, and let's just take a look at this last section. So he is literally on the front here. We can tell a huge chunk of drive in the pace with no cadence change whatsoever, and then he comes into this, which is a corner, so he's freewheeling around the corner, comes back into it. What's this? Might be a slight descent. It might well be, actually, because the speed is going up a lot. Well, not a lot, but up to 60k an hour, then it drops back down. So he's doing a lot of work. In fact, he's doing nearly all the work himself, which we saw in the race footage. Now, 432 watts for 11 minutes is huge. Not so huge for a guy like him, but after this amount of time in the saddle, it's big. We look at this is what's impressive. He finishes off the effort with this. Now, in training, this, I'm going to put that out there right now and say this is almost impossible to do in training. I don't think you could do that kind of effort in training and then do this at the end. Particularly not after 6.5 hours. You might well be doing it in training, but not after 6.5 hours. I think if you have the cheese, so to speak, if you have the carrot in front of you, which MVDP did, I think that's when the whole dynamic changes and he's able to produce this amount of power because he knows he's got a chance. And if I can put the race footage here for the final basically 600 meters, I'll put it in this video, and all credit goes to the TV coverage. But the effort itself is just remarkable, how he's able to do this kind of power right here, 600 plus watts, a slight delay, and then bang up to 1400, and then managed to hold like a proper sprint, basically to the line without hardly any drop off. That's incredible, and that's what's breaking the internet basically. And because I do hill climbs, I can compare this a lot to the hill climbs that I do, but the power he's producing there for 40 seconds, 871 watts, that's like huge. That's big enough to win like a small hill climb event, like a short hill climb event in the UK, but he's doing it after 6.5 hours. So what is he able to produce? That's the question I want to leave. This video is going to end right now, but that's the question I want to leave, an open-ended question in the comment section. What on earth can Mathieu van der Poel do when he's fresh, if he can do that after 6.5 hours?